Hi, this is my review of Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls. Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls is the second fantasy role-playing game in existence after Dungeons and Dragons. This game is quite legendary, and when you say Tunnels and Trolls, to my mind it always brings these names of very skilled and remarkable individuals such as Ken St. Andre, Rick Loomis, true pioneers in the field of fantasy role-playing games. And maybe a lot of you already know this, but this game started off with Ken St. Andre playing Dungeons and Dragons, liking the concept but not the execution of Dungeons and Dragons, so he decided to create his own game, his own vision of a fantasy role-playing game. Well, let's start with the quality of the PDF. When you get the PDF, you actually get two files, two PDFs. One is a very plain PDF with no bookmarks or hyperlinks, and the other one is an exceptional, at least in quality, it's an exceptional version of a PDF because you have this great organization when it comes to bookmarks and hyperlinks. So this is probably the easiest PDF in terms of navigation that I have encountered. Every time I wanted to get to a section of the book or look for something, it was just incredibly easy to get there. And you have these amazing old school illustrations giving you that sense of playing back in the 70s or the 80s. So it really excels in communicating that sense of discovery and wonder that you rarely get these days with so many RPGs out there. Even though they are quite nice, very cool, very fun, it's quite difficult to rediscover that essence of wonder of I'm finding out about this new cool game. And Tunnels and Trolls, Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls, certainly awakened that sensation within me. And and everything is very well explained. You have a clear understanding of the entire rules. However, there are three, what I will consider two errors and one thing that could have been improved. First, let's talk about in combat. I think the explanation of spite damage could have been a bit better because it gets confusing at times. Sometimes they tell you spite damage always hits, and sometimes only the losing side deals spite damage. So after reading it 2 or 3 times, after reading the combat section a few times, you get the general idea. But it could be a bit confusing. I think it could have been better explained. And I did find some errors in the combat example. So for example, just 2 errors. One is in page 83 in the round 1 paragraph where the spider is fighting Mijak. I think there's an error in when they add up the dice. And I found a similar error when adding dice in some other part of the book. I don't remember, but those are 2 errors. Unless I missed something, but I checked it and double checked it, and I think, for example, in this paragraph in page 83, I think it's 23, not 24, when you are adding the 6 plus 6 plus 4 plus 3 plus 3 plus 1. It should have been 23, unless I'm missing something again. But other than that, the quality is great, and you have some sections in full color. Most of the illustrations are in black and white, but you get some full color illustrations here and there. And the quality is just exceptional. Something that I just kept noticing time and again as I played the game is that the PDF is incredibly easy to navigate. Now let's talk about the content. This PDF is quite amazing because for somebody who has been playing role-playing games in a while, it's very user-friendly. And I really found the organization and the general way in which everything was explained quite easy to understand and fun at the same time. I once again felt like I was discovering this new game of monsters and warriors and wizards. And for those who have never played an RPG before, they're going to understand everything perfectly, because Ken St. Andrews' concept is about using simple rules and yet keeping a certain degree of customization and some depth and structure. So in Tunnels and Trolls, you get some very standard things. You create your character. You can basically choose three types, which is the warrior, the wizard, and the rogue. You also get some other more advanced things, such as specialists, but those are quite exceptional and rare because you need to roll triples when you roll your dice to generate your character. And then you get a specialist who is someone quite skilled at a particular task or an area of expertise. So you roll your prime attributes, you get some basic abilities depending on the class that you choose. This is a game not about instant superheroes. This is a game of heroes who become stronger and stronger as they level up. It's a gradual process. And that's something I really enjoyed about the characters in this game. Even you reach some very epic levels of power. This is a game that excels, in my opinion, when playing at lower levels. But you can go as far as you want. And there are many things that are still pose a threat or a risk to your character. Even if you're a warrior with your full plate of armor, there will be traps that will spell instant death. Even if you fight like 10 battles, because of the spite damage that I will describe in a bit, you're still going to feel the wear and tear of battle, and you're always going to be at risk. Now, when you, after creating your character, you obviously need to equip your character with weapons and armor, and it's quite exciting to see what stats you rolled to choose the best weapon for you. If you're a character of just pure brute strength and very little dexterity, you're going to have these massive weapons. But if you're a character who has a nice balance of dexterity and strength, there are some finesse weapons that are quite potent. And you should also consider dual wielding, in my opinion, because a character with a balance of strength and dexterity certainly is great for dual wielding. And something that I forgot to mention in character creation is that you may end up with an extremely powerful character if you are lucky. If you keep rolling triples, because you re-roll the triples, your character could start at a level above level 1, maybe level 2, 3, or whatever, and according to the luck of the dice. And that's quite exciting. Every time you create a new character, you're waiting to see if you create a very strong character. So this is a game really old school at essence. If you have a party of different players, it's not strange that maybe one player is going to be a lot stronger than the others, and the others should embrace the spirit of this game, and they should feel bad that, oh, my character is so weak. They should try to work with what they got. Now, when it comes to the type of adventures that you're going to have, Tunnels and Trolls lends itself for a nice balance of combat and exploration. You gain adventure points, which are kind of like experience points in other games, to become stronger. Not only because of combat, it also depends on your saving rolls, which are basically like skill checks. So if you want to create a character that almost never fights, you could get experience from fulfilling certain objectives and making your saving rolls. Or if you're a wizard, every time you cast spells, you're also going to get points for that, depending on how you use those spells. And a warrior, of course, if you like hacking and slashing and thrusting, you're going to get points for killing enemies. So this is a very customizable game. You can have the type of adventures that you want, and this is one of the strongest points. The thing that I'm going to talk about right now, it's something that amazed me in its simplicity, and that's the hostile opposition. The monsters that you can create in this game are quite simple, and because of that, because of the way stats are handled, if somebody came to your house suddenly and wanted to say, I want to play a role-playing game, and you have nothing prepared, Tunnels and Trolls is really the game for you. Creating an improvised adventure with this system is quite unique because you get a solid structure. It feels like everything was planned ahead of time, but it's also simple. Basically, a single number represents an entire monster or group of monsters, and you just need to come up with a few abilities to make that monster unique. Maybe if it's a troll, it has regeneration. If it's a spider, maybe poison. If it's a giant, maybe some type of clubbing attack. You can come up with the ability immediately as you need it, and you're going to have a blast playing. That's amazing. So this is a game that can be played with minimal preparation, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to combat, you have certainly a great degree of simplicity, but there is some depth. Basically, each side of the battle, let's say the heroes and the monsters, add all of their attacks together, and the higher number wins, the highest number. But you also have spite damage, and spite damage is kind of like chip damage. Chip damage in the sense of chipping away at the enemy. So every battle feels like it's going to take a bit of a toll on your group. And you also have some considerations. Maybe you want to use ranged weapons to target a specific enemy. Maybe you want to use spells, of course. Or maybe if your character doesn't have too much of high IQ, because maybe you overthink things, you will be able to enter this primal berserk state of combat in which you could deal a lot more damage potentially by sacrificing a bit of your abilities and finesse. So combat is quite simple and quite rewarding, and because of the way that all of the attacks are added together, combat doesn't take that long. Some people could consider that this game becomes a bit of a chore to roll all those dice, because you roll a lot of dice when you fight. But because of that same number of dice, some combats could end up perhaps even in a single round, depending on the results that you got. So it feels quite gritty. Maybe if you have a very high level character fighting a very high level enemy, but we're talking about beyond epic, it's going to feel somewhat repetitive round after round. But there are ways to minimize this. There are suggestions, and that's something that I really must mention. The entire PDF has all sorts of tips and advice and options and alternate rules to speed up things if you think they are going too slow, or to make things last a bit more if you want it that way, because this is the deluxe version of Tunnels and Trolls. This keeps the essence of the original game, but has added many improvements and polished some things. But they also mention how things were before, if you prefer that version of the game. And when it comes to magic is pretty cool, because it doesn't take itself too seriously, but the effects are quite devastating. So you're going to get spells with names very like meta, maybe surreal in their funny style, names such as "Oh, go away," or "Hocus Focus," or "Take that, you fiend." And such names like that are sound ridiculous and funny. Some even sound pretty gonzo, and you're going to love it because they keep that old school style and focusing on the fun of things. A lot of players are probably going to rename the spells according to their wizard's own style, but you're going to laugh a bit or snicker a bit when you see these crazy, ridiculous names of spells. You also have a lot of good advice on how to run the game, how to be a good game master and a good player. And before I get into more advanced things, let me tell you that this game is one of the most excellent role-playing games when it comes to solo gaming. This is very well supported. You can find some free adventures out there, and some adventures that you have to purchase for solo play, and they are quite replayable, very cheap. And that's it, great value for the money that you pay, and you replay these adventures and you're going to have a lot of fun. I was really curious because this is probably the first fantasy role-playing game that supported solo adventures. And I did purchase Buffalo Castle. I'll review that one in a future video. And I had a lot of fun playing Buffalo Castle. It worked better than I expected it to work. I was really surprised that I got killed a lot of times playing that adventure. And I'm really thinking of purchasing more adventures for this game because they're quite amazing. It works really well. So if you're someone who enjoys playing RPGs solo, or you don't have a group, you need to get this Tunnels and Trolls. It presents some very the combat just works really fast, but you still have a sense of depth, of tactics. Do you want to go berserk? Or maybe you want to run away because the enemy is just too strong. What kind of weapon are you going to use? Are you going to rely on your 2 axes? Or are you going to bring some lighter weapon in case the monster attacks you with some poison effect and your strength is cut in half and you can no longer wield 2 axes? So it's a very good game. If not, maybe it's probably... I feel inclined to say that it's the best solitaire game that I have played in terms of fantasy role-playing games. There are some other good out there, but this certainly makes me reconsider my other options. And the PDF has all these appendixes, so you can find spells and anything that you want. And as I was telling you, the organization is just pretty good to navigate the entire thing. Now you have a section of elaborations, and these are basically optional rules to make your game a bit more complex if you want. The game is very simple at its heart, and it works great like that, but you get more details on warriors, wizards, rogues, specializing your specialist, paragons, which are the most exceptional and rare characters that you can get. And in this game, you don't need to play just human or humans or the standard fantasy races. You can also play, if you wanted, you would play as a troll or as a centaur. You have many monstrous races to play, and tips on how to play them with their own characteristics and their way their attributes are modified. A lot of options indeed. And you have an entire campaign setting with this PDF. You have the Troll World, and Troll World I really surprised me because I was expecting something more cookie cutter and more shallow in terms of because of the simplicity of the game, but it's quite detailed. You have a timeline and information on different continents: the Dragon Continent, the Eagle Continent, the Eastern Islands of the Great Ocean. You have the different cities: Gazan, the city of Nor, Foron, etc. And you also have 2 adventures with this game. You have a solitaire adventure that you can use every time your character gets killed. It's replayable and it's scalable depending on the level of your character. It's going to be a very challenging adventure all the time. And you also have a Game Master adventure called Into Zor, and it's also quite pleasing that this introductory adventure felt quite epic. It's a multi-part adventure, but it feels like sort of like a campaign, so that's really good. Well, let me tell you what I think of Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls. This, as I was telling you, this is my first experience playing Tunnels and Trolls, and I know this is going to become one of my favorite fantasy role-playing games, and it's just really amazing the way the solitaire gameplay works and the way that you can prepare an adventure for almost anyone, anytime, any place. You can come up with some monsters on the fly and just present a basic plot line, and you're going to have a blast playing. It's certainly one of the best. You definitely need to get this. And if you have never played a solo adventure before, you must get Tunnels and Trolls. And as I was telling you, you have a lot of free adventures out there. Just visit RPG Now or Drive Through RPG, and you're going to find these magazines with free adventures, and free magazines, of course, and other free adventures, standalone experiences, and Buffalo Castle, which I purchased. I was really surprised. It's certainly one of those legendary solo adventures that you read in different encyclopedias of RPGs, and you definitely need to get this. This offers a great experience as a game master and as a solo player. My highest recommendation, seriously, you need to get this one. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.